On October 1, 2013, the science fiction section of the San Francisco Public Library was dead quiet. A 29-year-old man sat alone in a corner, typing away on his laptop. He had no idea that several of the people browsing the shelves around him were undercover federal agents, waiting for a signal to swarm. They couldn't simply walk up and arrest him. If the target noticed the agents and closed his laptop lid, an encrypted kill switch would engage. That single motion would instantly and permanently lock away all the evidence the government needed to prove he was running a billion-dollar criminal empire. The guy sitting in the library looked like any other tech worker in the city, but the FBI suspected he was the mastermind behind the largest digital drug cartel in human history. This standoff was the final play in a years-long global manhunt. Law enforcement had spent thousands of hours chasing a digital phantom, a target so thoroughly insulated by modern encryption that several intelligence agencies believed he was completely unpatchable. Buying illegal drugs used to mean standing on a street corner, exposing yourself to physical danger and police surveillance. But this empire existed entirely on the dark web, a hidden layer of the internet that you can't reach through standard search engines, built specifically for total anonymity. The foundation of this marketplace relied on two distinct technologies. The first is software called Tor. As this diagram shows, instead of connecting directly to a website, Tor bounces your connection through random, encrypted nodes all over the planet. It is military-grade IP scrambling, originally developed by the U.S. Navy, making it nearly impossible to trace where a user is actually located. But hiding your location is only half the battle. You still have to pay for the product. Credit cards leave a paper trail, so the creator added Bitcoin to the loop. By exclusively using a decentralized digital currency, the platform created a closed transaction system that banks and governments couldn't monitor. In early 2011, these two technologies were combined into a single polished website. It had search bars and customer reviews and a shopping cart. It was quickly dubbed the Amazon of drugs. Its real name was the Silk Road. At the top of this massive illegal marketplace sat a completely anonymous administrator who ruled the site forums under the pseudonym Dread Pirate Roberts. By fusing Tor's location cloaking with Bitcoin's financial anonymity, Dread Pirate Roberts neutralized the DEA, the FBI, and Homeland Security. Traditional investigative tactics failed because there were no wiretaps to place and no bank accounts to freeze. The kingpin was functionally invisible. The untouchable Dread Pirate Roberts was actually a guy named Ross Ulbricht. He was a former Eagle Scout and a physics graduate student from Texas, a guy whose family and friends knew him as a quiet, compassionate kid. During graduate school, Ross became obsessed with extreme libertarianism. He argued that individuals own their bodies entirely, meaning any government restriction on what people choose to consume or sell is an oppressive use of force. He built the Silk Road to put that theory into practice. To seed the site, Ross grew his own magic mushrooms in an off-the-grid cabin and mailed them out in padded envelopes. 2 years later, his platform was a global bazaar, processing hundreds of millions of dollars in cocaine, heroin, and forged documents. Ross wanted to create a marketplace defined by absolute, unregulated freedom. But to keep a massive illegal enterprise running smoothly, he had to become an absolute dictator. The larger the Silk Road grew, the more unstable it became. Rival hackers began attacking the site, demanding massive Bitcoin ransoms. Inside the platform, millions of dollars went missing. Ross didn't know it at the time, but two corrupt federal agents investigating the case had secretly gained admin access and were quietly draining user accounts for themselves. Faced with extortion and theft, the peaceful idealist snapped. When a user threatened to release the identities of thousands of Silk Road customers, Ross paid a hitman $150,000 in Bitcoin to have the blackmailer killed. Over a 2-year span, Ross ordered and paid for hits on 6 different people. Law enforcement later discovered that none of the assassinations actually took place. Ross was being scammed by users posing as hitmen. But Ross didn't know that. He received staged photos of corpses and believed he was actively executing anyone who threatened his business. The code running the Silk Road remained a fortress against the government, but Ross's descent into violent paranoia proved that the human element of his digital utopia was already collapsing. While elite cybercrime units tried to break Tor's encryption, an IRS tax investigator named Gary Alford took a completely different approach. Instead of fighting the technology, Gary used a basic Google search. He simply looked for the very first time the words Silk Road appeared anywhere on the internet. That search led him to a 2011 post on an internet forum for magic mushroom enthusiasts. A user named Altoid was casually asking the community if anyone had tried out a new anonymous marketplace and provided the exact complex Tor URL to reach the site. Gary searched the forum history for that username and found another post made 8 months later. Altoid was looking to hire an IT professional for a Bitcoin startup. At the bottom of the job ad, he left an email address for applicants to contact, rossulbricht@gmail.com. Pulling that thread, Gary found a coding question about Tor posted on the site Stack Overflow. The user initially posted under the real name Ross Ulbricht. Less than a minute later, the user panicked and changed his handle to Frosty. The FBI had recently copied the main Silk Road server in Iceland. The master admin computer communicating with that server was named exactly that, Frosty. The government spent years trying to crack an impenetrable labyrinth of military-grade encryption and untraceable cryptocurrency. In the end, they bypassed all of it because the mastermind posted his personal Gmail address on a public forum, which brings us back to the San Francisco Public Library. The FBI knew Ross was Dread Pirate Roberts, but knowing it wasn't enough. They had to catch his hands on the keyboard while he was logged in before he could trip at the kill switch. An undercover agent, posing as a Silk Road staff member, messaged Ross and asked him to check a flagged post. To do this, Ross had to navigate deep into the site's restricted master admin panel. Once he was in, 2 undercover agents standing directly behind Ross started a loud, aggressive lover's quarrel. The shouting echoed through the quiet library. Ross turned his head to look. In that exact fraction of a second, an agent swooped in and grabbed the laptop straight off the desk. Before Ross could react, he was pinned. The laptop was secured, completely unlocked. The screen showed the master control board of the Silk Road, operated by a computer named Frosty. The government couldn't solve a digital problem, so they executed an analog solution. At trial, Ross's defense team claimed he was set up and framed by the real Dread Pirate Roberts. The jury didn't buy it. The chat logs, ledgers, and journals found on his open laptop were overwhelming. The judge handed down a staggering sentence: double life imprisonment plus 40 years, with no possibility of parole. Ross Ulbricht set out to engineer a digital utopia completely free from rules, regulations, and government oversight. Instead, a series of basic human errors condemned him to spend the rest of his life inside a federal penitentiary, the most heavily restricted, government-controlled environment on Earth.